you're late.
A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins.
In this diorama, there were so many firsts for me. I love the challenge of making an outdoor landscape again. Although my first diorama is more of an epic scene than a diorama. The last two dioramas have been in a futuristic setting. With rigid lines and formed metals, the scenes had to be precise and calculated. The Shire, on the other hand, is quite the opposite. Beautiful greens and rather worn and distressed dwellings. Nothing has straight lines, and nothing has to be perfect. It really was a relief in a way. Things can be easily fixed if you mess them up. Every fan of Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit has always dreamt of living in the Shire. I'm no exception. In this diorama, I portray Gandalf showing up at Bilbo's door, unannounced but very welcome. Warm and inviting brilliant shades of blues and greens were everywhere. Extruded polystyrene was used as the base. Using markers and painter's tape, I was able to give some perspective to the project. Shape, size, and scale was needed before I moved forward. I knew I wanted a pond and 3 hobbit holes. Using a heat gun and plenty of ventilation, I was able to melt the shape of the polystyrene to form the pond floor. Expanded polystyrene was a great light choice for the remainder of the bones of this diorama. I was able to shape out the styrenes with a heat knife cutter. Again, extruded polystyrene was a great choice for the hobbit holes. I started this one out with graphic design. Using the D5 X-Tool diode laser cutter again, I was really starting to get a hang of this new light burn software. Bag end, obviously, was my focal point. This needed to look the best, and I did spend the most amount of time on it. But it was also the furthest away from the eyes. I found out quickly that the closer hobbit holes were just as important. Putting my own spin on each hobbit hole was so much fun. I experimented with so many different techniques. The hobbit door was the easiest piece here. A circle with several vertical board lines. The color green was the hardest, a combo of 4 different greens. I made the brickwork around the door by etching rectangles into the basswood. The next pass was actually cutting the individual bricks. Painting all the bricks a different color, and then randomly and delicately gluing them in place. The side windows came out great. I spent days trying to figure out how to do the grills on the windows, but the payoff is huge. Again, etching or stenciling the brickwork beforehand. It was okay if the paint job or the placement isn't exact. It has to look like somebody has been living here for ages. Archways made from driftwood gathered from a beach in New England was something off the cuff. I finished Bag End off with pilasters and archway moldings. I really love doing the design on these two. Overlays of basswood, etching into the wood, or even stenciling for a guide on placement of the different moldings and shapes. Distressing the hobbit holes was a must. Making the homes look like they've been there for 1,000 years. So many ideas out there. Purple and yellow were the winners. Red was a close runner-up. Neutral stains and bright, bold paint colors. I simply glued and built these into the hillside, eventually covering it with greenery. The brickwork and brick walls was achieved by taking pieces of extruded polystyrene, using a utility knife and scribing straight horizontal lines. Then taking a straight edge screwdriver to divide up the bricks individually on the vertical. Scratching up and randomly gouging the foam with a stiff wire brush. Then painting each brick a different color. Black wash before and after to distress the bricks. A trick I learned years ago, instead of using heavy expensive plasters, I used toilet paper and wood glue for the uneven landscape. It's a cheap and great option and hardens like a rock. Highly paintable as well, however it does take 24 hours to dry. After the landscape was coated first with a layer of green paint, it was time for the first layer of grass. Dark green turf from Woodland Scenics. A very thin base to start with, and laid down using Mod Podge. Adhered down with spray tack from Woodland Scenics. Then using the static grass applicator, I applied a mixture of 2, 4, and 7 millimeter static grass. A surprising way to make formed rock walls as cheap as $0. Tree bark. Literally cut tree bark off carefully. Dry it out over a few day period. Spray with Mod Podge sealer, then paint with layers of acrylic paint. Black wash is the end step, which fills in all the gaps and gives texture. A wagon pathway to Bag End, made from real sand, with overgrown weeds and grass. Now the task of blending the landscape to hide the solid lines of the foam, making things look seamless. One of the most time-consuming designs I created in Lightburn was Gandalf's wagon. It did come out fantastic, but it was just too cramped in this diorama. Very disappointing, but a wonderful learning experience for a future project. Sometimes you need to look at the overall picture instead of the individual components you may love. Working the staircase from the wagon road to starting the shrubbery around Bag End. This project had no shortage of details to attend to. Making chipped pieces of wood for the stone pathway to Bag End. Worn gray stains and distressed edges. Different hues of blue, starting with black and blue to extreme light toward the shore. I was able to glue tiny stones in the deeper areas of the pond. The long tall grass emerging from the water was tips of throwaway paintbrushes. It worked amazing. The water for the pond was made from Woodland Scenic's clear, deep water pour. A two-part resin that required you to mix the components together before you pour. I used a turquoise additive to add to the water. Never was crazy about the murky waters of the pond. but I've always loved the lighter and clearer pond waters, so that's what I did. I took some duct tape to secure the edges during the pour. A very slow pour is needed, and a level surface is a must. This is a self-leveling product, but it's also a thick product. It needs to be teased into the odds and ends. A few bubbles from the gases of the styrene to deal with, so a simple lighter was the cure to pop them. Patience to see everything cure up. I submerged a hidden gem in the pond. You have to look hard for it, but it was one of those special details I love to pride myself on. I let the deep water pour cure for 72 hours actually. It did look great, but I was looking for a little more color and a little more depth. Woodland Scenic's realistic water with a little more turquoise for the top layer. Only good for an 1/8 inch. I pushed it to the limit. Very dry conditions in about 4 days, and it dried amazing. Skipping around a bit here, I tried my first tree. Way too big for this project. I spent a lot of time on it and I liked it, but it was just too big. Sacrifices everywhere, but no regrets. Worked some smaller trees together. A few coats of browns, grays, and greens for the wood. Then use a microfiber and green turf to finish it off. Fit to perfection. I love this part of the project. After I built the frame around the diorama bones, I quickly drew a tree to give depth to the project. Using extruded polystyrene, layered and adhered together, I used the heat knife with a straight edge to cut the frame out. Now glued into place, the tried and true toilet paper and wood glue to make the bark work. Let to dry for 24 hours before I took to the paint and the paint sprayer. Multiple colors as mentioned before, and a wonderful foliage using polyfiber and turf. Some things just speak for themselves. Printed using the laser engraver, the gate was printed in double to give substance and then glued together. This was the very first object I pictured before laying out the diorama. It was sort of the focal point. I never thought the chimneys would give me so much joy. One of my favorite pieces. Overlasered and a tad bit burnt. Different colors of bricks as before. Distressed out to the max and very weathered. A square piece of wood to lay them over, and then a slate capstone with a charred flue. Easily the easiest diorama when it comes to wiring. A few flickering lanterns on the outside of the homes. A few micro LEDs inside the hobbit holes. A dimmable LED string light to show a high day in the beautiful nighttime landscape. The LED lights, to wire, to non-soldering splitters. All funneled down to the simple USB hub. Some things are just better left unsaid. After the frame was up, I wanted to go with the most inviting and most beautiful blue sky possible. A combo of different blues, ending with a lighter baby blue on the top. I used my hobby paint sprayer to delicately puff the sky with clouds. A little goes a very long way. A matte black frame was a little dark for such a bright day at the Shire. Warm corner pieces with various Lord of the Rings insignias. Knotwork moldings and engraved text passages from the movies surrounds the frame. Final touch on this project was choosing the beautiful doorknob in the engraving from Gandalf. A tranquil bench surrounded by gardens and flowers was my absolute final touch and one of my favorite pieces.